Welcome everyone, today we have a special guide for the Petra Point 3 Primal Dragon boss. This boss is gonna cost 40 Risen and there's 4 different elements for this particular boss. There's a lot of good drops from this boss, so you can get a random reward from 4 different elements, and the biggest item we'll get is the Dravenite Jade. In this guide, we'll go through a number of different bosses with all 4 of the elements. We'll have a look at the combination of characters and why do we must need a shielding character. You can see in some of the replays I will be using Zhongli, in other replays I will be using Noelle or even Bidu, so any of the shielding character can work. I'll show you guys the replays for all of those characters. Now because the boss have 4 different elements, we'll also go through the elements of the boss, and this will help us to understand what the boss do and how to deal with different elements of the boss. We'll go through this last. Now let's start with some of the general tips for this boss. I have started a warp point over here. This will allow me to come to the boss much faster. This will save about a minute of my time, and the boss respawns every 2 minutes. So if you're looking towards farming this boss, make sure you have a warp portal over here, so you don't have to run all the way here. Now I have tried to test if I can reset the elements of the boss by logging in and logging out. This does not work. No matter where I am, I cannot log in and log out and reset the element of the boss. So you have to defeat this one for the randomized 4 different bosses. And most of the time, we get a lot more of the electric one, as you can see over here. Now before we go through the shielding characters we can use, let's talk about the boss mechanics. There's a number of mechanics with the boss, and it's very important for us to be aware of this. The boss have a number of normal attacks, and those normal attacks are quite direct. He will be slamming into us with physical damage, and as he slams multiple slams, he will be dealing additional damage as he slams into us, as you can see over here. While the boss is slamming, he also have the potential to be casting his tail swipe and also his puffing of the elemental spell. So here he is actually swiping. If you're directly in front of the boss, what's going to happen is there is going to be a small window for him to be casting his particular primal shower attack. This is quite important. You must, or you really want to have a shielding character for this particular attack. So there is about 2 to 3 seconds of the window for this special mechanics. What you want to do is, you want to make sure you are protected by a shield, and this will reflect tremendous damage back to the boss. You do not have to have the same shield as the element of the boss. This is not needed. So any of the geo characters that creates a geo shield or any of the shielding characters can work over here. And this is the most important mechanics in the game. As you can see over here, as long as I have a shield, I will do massive reflect damage to the boss. And this will allow us to do at least 30 or even 40% damage to the boss. Now keep in mind guys, all of the elements of the boss will have the same attacks, but some of the special animations and some of the particular attack patterns are a little different. Most of the boss will have the digging spell, so they go under the ground and they will come up next to you. You do want to avoid this one because he does come up with a massive slime. And as you can see, the boss will summon some of those special elemental totems. For those totems, you do not want to be next to it. For different boss, they have different totems. And for this particular pyro boss, I lasted longer just to show you guys everything the boss has to offer. For the pyro boss, the elemental totem will have AoE burning fire damage on the ground. And the boss also, when you're at a range, the boss can summon a lot of totems like this. You don't want to be standing next to totems, and different totems have different effect. Some exploding electric, some exploding coil, and this one burns the ground. You do want to avoid those totems. Now we could try to wait for the boss shielding mechanics to come up, but I tried for about a minute or 2, it does not come up that frequently. It seems that you have to bring the boss to a certain HP threshold for him to have this special shield protecting mechanics. So the one you want to retaliate with shield, it doesn't come up unless he is brought to a certain HP range. Now with this boss, what you want to be aware is, if you're standing in front of him, he can be puffing the pyro damage into us. And over here we can see the boss is about to puff the pyro damage into us. Depending on the elements of the boss will puff different elements onto us. And there you go. If you're in front of the boss, the puffing of the elements also debuffs your character. So here I'm set on fire. Now you could go behind the boss, but you are also vulnerable to the boss's tail swipe. The biggest focus again is to have the shield ready. Whenever you get the boss to about a 3rd HP, he will be likely to be casting this particular spell. You really want to have a shielding character, and this will be our next focus as well. Now talking about having a shielding character, over here I'll be using Noelle. I'm sure most of us have Noelle, and having Noelle is really important because she can have a consistent shield and she's one of the free-to-play characters we can use. Notice the boss dealt a particular tail swipe, so if you're in front of him, he can be dealing the elemental puffs to you. But if you're behind him or if you're like right on his side, he can be doing the tail swipe, so be actually aware of this. Notice that he crouches down before he does the tail swipe, and if you're within the range, you'll be dealt with massive damage. So be extra careful with this one. It took about 20% of my game's HP. So you can stay at range, but if you are staying at range, be careful with the tail swipe. Now the focus of this Noelle fight is that we're waiting for the boss to be at 3rd HP. And when that happens, I'll make sure I have the Noelle shield ready. So notice the boss goes to about the 3rd HP, and it's warning me to have the shield ready. Having Noelle is really good, because you can have the shield on and be ready for this particular attack. And notice we retaliated about 20% of his HP back to him, and this is really important. So if you don't have a particular shielding character, Noelle is definitely the character to go. It doesn't even have to be a high level Noelle. You just have to have Noelle ready when the boss is about to cast. And as you can see in some of the replays we're going to go through, the boss's casting time is actually not that quick. So he actually gives you about 1 to 2 second window to be casting your shield. Even if you're in the animation, you might be able to cast his shield. Because notice that he takes 1 to 2 seconds to charge up, then you can cast the shield. And I'll show you guys a special example with Bidoof against the boss. As you guys can see over here, I have a level 20 Bidoof, and she is gonna die with 1 attack from the boss. So the whole goal of this shield character is just to cast a shield on the right moment. This is quite important because if I don't do this properly, she's gonna be dead in 1 shot. And our focus is to make sure we have the boss to 1/3 HP and then cast Bidoof's shield. So fast forwarding over here, we can see the boss is about to be 1/3 HP. And at this moment, I'm ready to switch into Bidoof. So notice that this text already started. The boss has started charging, and I'm a little delayed. So what I want to do is, I want to get Bidoof ready for the charge attack and to retaliate. Notice that I was a little too quick for the charge attack, but it still worked. So even with Bidoof's shield, which lasts for about a second, it can still work. And notice that with a level 20 Bidoof, I was able to counter the boss, and this is quite important. Now, to be honest, we don't have to go as extreme as having the Bidoof against the boss, because she's one of the hardest shielding characters. Any of the shielding characters or even the Geo characters can work, because the Geo characters can interact with the Geo Crystallize and create an elemental shield against the boss. So if you have Albedo, if you have Zhongli, if you have Noelle, if you have the Geo Traveler, this can also work, especially for Nergal as well. So anyone who does Geo damage or anyone that can cast a shield can work. Diana can work, you can have Xingyan, you can go with any of the shielding characters, and there's a lot of them to go through. And notice the latest banner, they're actually giving us a lot of the shielding characters. So if you have any of the shielding characters, you can go against the boss. Now coming over to the elements of the boss, we had a good look at the Pyro boss, which does explosion damage. Now to understand the Electro Explosion, what happens is with the Electro Totem over here, if you stand next to this totem, after a few seconds, this totem will explode. The boss can summon 1 totem when he dives under the ground, or he can summon multiples of those totems. So make sure you don't stand next to those totems. Notice over here, I'm close to those totems, and I was vulnerable because of the totem. And I also got coupled by the boss. Because I was trying to use Bidoof against the boss, I wasn't good at timing. So you don't want to stand next to those totems because they will explode into electricity. And over here you also get to see what happens when you don't counter the boss with a shield, which means massive damage and a massive AoE damage. Now if we come over to the Cryo Elemental boss, what you're going to see is the boss is going to shake his body and he's going to summon a lot of totems. This is the same for most of the boss, but for the Cryo one, he's going to emanate a radius of AoE damage next to the totems. So notice there's a totem underneath him, there's a totem around him. All of those totems were going to explode for AoE cryo damage. So be extra careful of this one. The other one seems to be damaging on the ground continuously. This one is just AoE damage in a burst sentence. So this seems to be doing a little more damage compared to the other boss. And finally, we have the Hydro boss. Most of the mechanics are very similar, but with the Hydro boss, what you're going to see is he's going to be summoning a lot of totems, and those totems again are going to explode for the Hydro damage. For those Hydro totems, notice that instead of the burst damage like the Cryo ones or the AoE damage, those will deal random nice damage as the Hydro damage. So notice that they're spawning the little pools of Hydro everywhere, so be careful with those. So those are not directly AoE, but they're random and they deal quite decent damage. So the Cryo ones and the Hydra ones seems to be doing a more burst damage. The Electro ones and also the Pyro ones seems to be doing continuous damage on the floor. Now hopefully you guys found this special boss guide helpful, and also keep in mind while you're farming the boss, because we're getting a lot of random of the boss essential materials, this can be Geo, this can be anything but an emo, and we can also have a chance of getting the 5-star graded items, so those are really nice. So notice here, during one of my boss fights, I actually got one of the Geo 5-star items, and that was really nice. And also, if you guys have any tips or guides for this particular new boss, let us know in the comments below of your special teams, strategies against this particular new boss. And best of luck with Shell and also against the boss, guys. Now, if you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe and also turn the little bell on for the latest news. I'll be looking towards to make more builds, guides, tips, and news and event updates for us as we come further into the game. And as always, I wish you guys the best of luck with capturing and have the most fun in exploring this wonderful world.